Hi, and welcome to the Planet Driven Brands podcast. In this show, we will be discussing with our guests how brands they represent can help in the drive to build a better, more sustainable and safer planet. We will highlight brands as drivers for change and the role they play as influencers. How will brands positively impact the planet and its environment? This is what we're going to find out. Do brands actually have any responsibility to change? Planet Driven Brands podcast, episode 33. Today's guest is Jason Ash, the founder of YoungPlanet Enterprises. We're going to be discussing the alleviation of waste in children's products. Well, hi Jason, thanks so much for coming onto our show. I wonder if you could give us a quick introduction.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Jason. I founded an app called YoungPlanet off the back of 25 years in sort of corporate and private equity world, and we're getting stuck in. So it's really, really good to be here. Where
do you sit in regards to brands and businesses, and how they're doing in regards to taking responsibility for the planet?
That's a huge question. I think it's entirely varied. Coming from a CPG, FMCG background and working in multinationals, businesses at scale. But you see it everywhere. There is a mix of genuine interest and desire on the corporate angle, invariably sprinkled in with greenwash and people like me marketing things to be more than perhaps they are. Brands that work over time for consumers are authentic and very consistent with what they offer and how they fit into the world. Yes. And at any time, like people actually, any time where it's inauthentic, consistently over time, no matter what the history is, it can break the trust bond between the consumer and that brand. So I think it's a huge thing at the moment, particularly given the complexities of climate change and waste.
What about consumers? Do you think they're playing their role?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a huge desire to be more sustainable in the way we live. To be fair, as somebody that's come to this quite enthusiastically, shall we say, in the last 3 to 5 years, both in old school industries around deposit return schemes and things for bottles and cans, but also in the tech thing I have now, it is hugely complicated. And the sound bites, unfortunately, don't work. I was talking to somebody quite senior in the motor industry, and as an example of diesel being bad and hybrids being good, it's not as simple as that. And people are moving away from diesel. And again, in my limited understanding of that particular problem, but as somebody who's about to buy a car, having just sold a car, it's really confusing. The net is diesel is bad for particulate in cities. It's not necessarily an environmental question. And if it was simple as don't eat meat and you'll save the world, I think a lot more people would do it. But it really isn't that simple. It's vastly complicated. And there is an element of common sense, but it's not one thing that's going to get us out of the mess. It's a hell of a lot of things applied authentically and with knowledge and with the best knowledge at the time. I think people feel it. Almost on a daily basis, people are feeling it more. And the role of brands in that and businesses that can maintain a direction of travel that is on pace with or even ahead of consumer expectations, I think those ultimately will win, because I think people will be prepared to pay. And the price of something in 25 years' time won't just be money. It'll be impact, and whether we get all the way to nutrition tables with traffic lights on them or monikers like Red Tractor or wherever it might be, I do think it's on its way, but it is vastly complicated.
I agree. Now, you did touch on something when you spoke a minute or so ago, and that was waste. And I know that you're heavily engaged now in trying to help in that regard. I just wondered if you could just talk about the size of the problem.
For me, I wouldn't pretend to be an expert on this at all. I do some stuff with the LSE. We work with LWARD. We do a number of things within the business. But it terrifies me that the sort of, to use the American phrase, the soup to nuts sort of explanations or path from waste, household waste, to what happens next. It's all very well filling a green bin, but what happens next is something that is rather like laws and sausages. One must never know how they're made because you'll never trust them again. What happens to your green bins, and it doesn't matter how much you separate and how diligent you are, it's still a problem. But again, back to the complexity point, We eat a lot of food in the house. I've got 3 children, there's 5 of us in the household. We love fresh food. We try to eat seasonally. I'm always ranting about how offensive avocados are, in the sense that, I love avocados, but they come technically in their own green packaging, right? But they're always in a plastic tray and in a plastic bag, and they're the single-use plastic twice, and it's offensive. But that extends their life from sort of 3-4 days to 18 to 20 days, and so it's not a simple equation. And for me, it's just about, there is waste is the output, if you like, and the outcome. It's the input piece that we focus on here, both as a family and in the business. So what can we do to reduce usage? Because the good versus evil battle. There is nothing more good versus evil than the overconsumption of the world's resources to its destruction.
So I think that brings us on to talking about YoungPlanet.
Yeah, well, brilliant. So, I mean, my wife is incredibly diligent around waste and recycling, and I'm less so, having been a corporate person that's flown around the world far too much for my own comfort these days, right? But we have 3 young children still. The observation of 90% of what they have is left dormant in places. They've either forgotten about it, they've moved on from it, they've developed beyond it, etc. and so forth. But it's in children's nature to want things, and it's in parents' nature to provide for them. YoungPlanet is very simply digitizing hand-me-downs and adding scale to it across community, in the sense that, the 90% of stuff that we have here that's lying dormant and perfectly usable gets put on YoungPlanet. Somebody else that needs it, that is a different kind of stage, if you like, with children's development, to our children, requests it, and vice versa. So we're just a conduit to those exchanges, and adding scale and digitizing the hand-me-down process. So rather than just friends and family, because you find as you go through, we found this, where your friends have children roughly the same age, and you all pop out the top and don't know what to do with all the stuff you've got. If you're early on that spectrum, you can hand it to other people. If you're late on that spectrum, you get it from other people. But at the end of the day, you pop out the top, and there's just a lot of stuff hanging around. In terms of when it started, we could talk about the idea of it. It started, we were living in New York, and Freddie, my oldest, so 3 at the time, we came across what the Americans call a garage sale. And there was this beautiful old piece of Americana, this red Radio Flyer fire truck, that Freddie's eyeballs went out on stalks and jumped on it and started hooting around. And I was like, oh, we've got to buy this now. Fall in love with it. And just chatting to the guy for a few minutes, a bit of his life story, a bit of my life story. He wouldn't accept any money for it, because he said it was so cool to see someone enjoying it again. And this is, 11 years ago, whatever it is, 10, 11 years ago. And that is where the kernel of it started. So it took a while to percolate, a good 6-7 years, but essentially that's it. And the fact that there is a lot of stuff that children have that goes unused, but is perfectly usable. There's a lot of cost associated, financial as well, in raising children, which is unnecessary given the sort of natural obsolescence and attrition rate within that. And then you layer in the environmental factors, et cetera, and so forth. And it all sort of came together in launching this app called YoungPlanet.
So tell us about the app. What does it do?
Well, stuff you no longer need, you list, people request it, and they can either come and pick it up, or you arrange to post through the app. And stuff you need, you look on the app, and at any one point there's a couple of thousand things on there. You have a look, and it's almost invariably there if it's to do with child raising. And it's not just things like, car seats and bike helmets and bikes. It's silly little things like, actually one of the most amusing things we've ever had on there, which again is, I think, an insight into the parenting community, because I think one of the reasons why we've got 50,000 users in London, straight off the bat without much investment actually in terms of marketing, is because we communicate what is, I think, quite obvious when you're a parent, kind of insight structure around the shared experience of parenting. And if you sort of step back from that a little bit, we all go through school or university or work or whatever it is, and you're quite linear in your network. Your network completely changes at the school gates, and it sort of inverts, and it goes to the community around you. And so that's what we kind of tap into in terms of word of mouth. But the funniest thing we've had on there was dog slalom course, which sounds ridiculous, right? But actually, as a parent, you look at it, I think the person had listed it with a dog jumping through a hoop and some slalom sticks, and it said dog slalom course, perfect for toddlers. the young guys look at that and go, oh, why would someone list that? And we looked at it and went, that's brilliant. That's brilliant for kids. If you've got kids, just look around, because there's a lot of stuff that could be used and could be repurposed. And actually the stuff that they want and go through, look for it secondhand or look for it on something like YoungPlanet, because it is there.
Yeah. What is interesting is plastic within toys.
Plastic absorbs CO2 and it holds CO2 in and of itself. It's actually much better in terms of the manufacturing process than steel. But it's the fact that its half-life is 280 years or whatever it is, and people only use it once. That's the issue, right? It's actually a really good thing.
Really good thing is probably what pretty much everybody said. Plastic is a brilliant material. Yeah. It's an amazing material. Like you say, it's just how we use it or abuse it is the thing.
As you say, I do think it's how we use plastic is the issue, because in and of itself, even the manufacturing of plastic is not as bad as people might think. But again, it's part of this complicated web of communications and sound bites that are sort of not enabling, or accurately, because there is no simple answer, people to understand what the right thing to do is. So you have to sort of default to common sense.
Yeah, that's a great way to end. I want you to tell us how we can get YoungPlanet on our phones. Yeah,
just an app. So it's available Google or Apple, depending on which side of the fence you are. And we've just released it nationally in the UK. Probably in one other country beginning of next year, but it's available in the usual places, called YoungPlanet, all one word. Yeah, I would say at any one point there's a good couple of thousand things on there. The more the merrier. Everyone's welcome to get on there and have a look. It's a lovely community. And actually, one of the things that we get thank you cards for, actually, and we see evidence of day to day. It's actually really, back to the story about the red truck. It's really nice to see in this instance, because there's an emotive element to it as well, where if you've given something that was used by your children that is then evidently used by somebody else, there's a community developing around that that's just reminding itself that the joy of giving, whilst nobody's going to put a number on it in terms of monetary value, it does feel really nice to do that, and in the process of doing that, do the right thing.
Fantastic. Circularity. Began with the red truck and ended with it. So perfect. I love that. That's brilliant. I wish you so much luck with it. Thank you so much for your time, Jason.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. The Planet Driven Brands podcast is the brainchild and copyright of Nick Jones and is broadcast in partnership with theplanetsagency.com. Planet's Agency is a partnership of consultants and communications experts. We build planet-driven brands. During the series of shows, we'll be hearing from more experts, and we would love for you to be involved. Please do comment or come back to us with questions. We'll be happy to engage. If you wish to be notified when our episodes are broadcast, please subscribe on the website. If you'd like to be part of the show, we'd love to hear from you. We look forward to many more entertaining episodes. Thanks again for listening.